right, Mr. Morgan is recognized to explain the amendment. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hold on. Did you read the amendment?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. We're on the amendment. Sorry, Mr. Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, this amendment actually will fit into that category of bipartisan amendment because members of both parties in different states and even at the federal level have supported similar issues like this. It simply makes it so that the secretary that will be the new head running this must not have been a registered lobbyist within 5 years prior to their appointment. Now, we've had all sorts of issues over the years, primarily at the federal level, but even at state levels, of having people that have conflicts, that have lobbied, that then get appointed as heads of different agencies. And this particular policy, the Trump administration had a 5-year ban on lobbying before and after. The Biden administration recently implemented a 2-year ban on lobbying as the agency head of dealing with issues that you lobbied for. Other states have similar bans. Alabama even has an outright ban. If you lobbied, you cannot serve as an agency head. So this simply makes it so that you cannot serve as the agency head within 5 years of being a registered lobbyist.
Any questions? Mr. Williams is recognized for a question.
Yes, real briefly, why would you suggest the 5-year ban instead of the 2?
Well, I prefer the 5-year ban. I think that it's better to have a longer time frame. As I mentioned, it's the most recent ban, and for this direct issue, dealing with a full ban from having lobbied at all.
So did you base this on any administration?
I'm sorry?
Did you base that decision on any previous administration?
No, the difference is the Trump administration one that I mentioned, the 5-year ban, prohibits being a registered lobbyist from serving. The Biden administration is you can serve, but you're limited in what you're allowed to have lobbied on and things you're allowed to deal with.
So you don't like the 2-year ban?
Well, I like the 2-year one too, but I like the 5-year one better, which is why I filed it.
Okay.
And like I said, Alabama has a full ban. I actually like that one too, but I think this is a reasonable one that protects from having lobbyists. They're called revolving door laws and rules, and I think they're important to have so that we don't have that kind of revolving doors between lobbyists and agency heads and legislators, etc.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, I'll move to passage.
Hold on, so we got a couple questions. Do you want those questions, Mr. Morgan? Mr. Gatch, Mr. Rutherford, hold up. Mr. Gatch is recognized for the next one. Okay. Are you waiting?
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. You said that you like the 2-1 better. Well, I missed what you said.
No,
something about 2 years and 5 years. Help me out.
I like banning it altogether the best, but I also recognize that I think the 5-year is a reasonable.
What did you like the best? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I like banning lobbyists serving as agency heads completely. That's my favorite, but I recognize that I want something that I know can pass the body. I think the appetite in here is to have this reasonable policy, which is a 5-year prohibition.
So help me understand for a second. As a lobbyist, we had a conversation about lobbyists last week, and these are some really nasty folks. These are really terrible folks, apparently. Can you tell me, what is a lobbyist? For the people who don't know what a lobbyist is, help us understand what a lobbyist is, because you don't want a lobbyist to be able to have this position for 5 years.
Yeah.
Please.
Mr. Gatch, I got to watch the debate earlier, and I do think that decorum is important in here. I think we should treat each other with respect, even when we vehemently disagree with each other. And I'm not a big fan of your tone today. I'll just say that.
You're sidestepping my question.
No,
How's that tone for you?
Yeah, I just really feel like we can model to other people watching, to kids, to the public, on proper decorum of how to interact with each other.
How about just answering questions with truthful answers? Can we model that for the people in South Carolina today?
We can, Mr. Gash, but I think you're proving the point right now. I really do.
The point of my decorum is a question we can talk about. My question to you, sir, is as a lobbyist.
We all talking over each other, and I'm not, let's answer questions. So let's do that, please. I don't No, Mr. Morgan, were you finished answering the question?
No, sir. I'll
Okay.
get directly to the question. Lobbyists are people who are paid to come up here and lobby government officials for specific interests. And there's nothing wrong with lobbyists. They serve a purpose. But I think it's important that people that are coming and doing that don't then run the agencies that they were just lobbying special interests in favor of. As I mentioned, this is a bipartisan issue. I think people of all parties and all walks of life recognize that this, you have different issues where you might have conflicts of interest and, money getting passed around, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. I think it's reasonable. I think it's important. I actually have a feeling this is going to pass unanimously. I'm hopeful that it does, and I'd like to stick with a policy at hand over personality conflicts. And I get that that's difficult at times for all of us, but on this issue, I think we can do it.
Okay, but regarding the lobbyists you said represent special interests. Is that what you said?
They're lobbying specific interests, yeah. And there's lobbyists for obviously all sorts of different things.
Like all different things, like small businesses. Is there a lobbyist for people like small businesses, or just individuals who have businesses in their community, maybe even in rural parts of America? Are there lobbyists for those types of people?
Yeah, they do. And like I said, they lobby all sorts of different interests, but people that are paid to lobby for those interests, I don't think should then turn around and run the agencies that regulate them.
Do we have lobbyists for the healthcare industry and things with regards to when people get sick and those things? Okay, so is it fair to say that a person who was a lobbyist for the healthcare industry would have some incredibly intricate and maybe even specialized knowledge in that field as a lobbyist?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in the healthcare industry would also have that same knowledge, and I would prefer to use somebody that was not paid to come up here and lobby government interests for those things.
But what about a doctor who was not a lobbyist, who got paid to be a doctor? Would you be okay with a doctor getting paid to be in this without a 5-year ban?
Yes, of course. This policy specifically is related to registered lobbyists. And I should also point out there's a reason that we have this entire category of registered lobbyists, that we require lobbyists to register. All states, the federal government require it. The reason is because it is important. So I think we don't want to start skewing to acting like it's not important to regulate lobbyists to have registration, and that a clear issue that, like I mentioned, has wide bipartisan support.
Well, what about doctors who have a clear social media, let's say, presence, and they're like super uber duper pro-vaccine, but they're not registered lobbyists? So you would have nothing and no problem with the person who's a doctor, let's say, who gets paid for their medical expertise, who has this incredibly public reputation to being pro something in a political world. They don't have to have a 5-year wait, even though that they're obviously conflicted out and biased in some way?
If you look up at the screen and read the specific language, it specifically says, to be eligible to serve as secretary, a person must not have been a registered lobbyist within 5 years prior to appointment. It's similar language to, as I mentioned, the Trump and Biden administrations have used in various iterations and other states.
But what it sounds like to me, Mr.
To registered lobbyists.
Yeah, I understand. What it sounds like to me is that you want us to believe that this is a very principled position, and that there's an issue of conflict and bias that you want to make sure doesn't get incorporated and imported into this position. Hold on a second. I'm getting to the question.
All right,
it sounds
let's get to the question, because we're
I'll have to repeat it all day if you need me to. It sounds like to me that you're trying to protect against this potential conflict and bias, that these registered lobbyists who would otherwise be conflicted out, who are getting paid to represent special interests, now would have the opportunity in a very nefarious and undermined and unethical way to be in this position. And we need to make sure, so that doesn't happen, that there's a 5-year waiting period. But you don't care about those same types of issues as it relates to people who are doctors or people who are physicians. I am still not finished. If you would just hold on a second.
Gentlemen. Hold on a second. Now, come on, guys. Y'all know better than this. He's asking a question. Mr. Morgan, you answer the question. You do not ask questions over him, and he does not talk when you're asking a question, guys. This is not hard. All right.
If I get my microphone back, I'm just trying to finish my question. So what it seems like to me is that you're using the registered lobbyist tag because it's a trigger word that makes people go, oh, this must be something that we got to be for. Mr. Morgan wants to be we're against this idea of registered lobbyists. Isn't it true that it is not about the principle? Isn't it true that this has nothing to do with about principle, but this is a great way that you can use on your campaign flyer that we're going to be against against lobbyists and registered lobbyists when you know that there are a lot of other issues with regards to, yes.
I'm baffled right now.
Hold on, suspend. Ms. Trantham, for what purpose do you rise?
Decorum. Mr. Speaker, I ask that you please make sure that when you are speaking to someone at the well, that you are not making innuendos or any type of comments about what you think they are doing when they are legitimately putting up an amendment. That is an amendment that we need to be debating. We need to be ask questions. Some of the questions in this body, we can hear it. We see it's not a legit question.
Right,
it's just taking up
Ms.
time.
Trantham, you're making a speech, and
well,
I told
the comment was,
Ms. Trantham, please. I got to hold decorum in this body, and so you raised the point of order of decorum, and you please just state. You stated that there's some impugning of the reasons or motivations that this is that what I'm hearing from you?
absolutely.
Okay.
And when you are speaking to another member, keeping that decorum, making sure that you're not making those little jabs about you're just doing this for the campaign trail.
I hear you, and I got to confine when we do these motions, just so you understand, when people raise point of orders, and I've been consistent throughout this whole process, that it's not an opportunity for you to give a speech or rebut what you're hearing, but you need to specifically raise the point of order. I told you earlier, I don't require you to tell me the rules. As long as you tell me that, I'll look up the rule for you. But I don't want speeches about it. I want the specific reasons and why you believe it was there. And I think you have expressed that to me. And so is decorum the purpose of that, and impugning the motives of this amendment?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Mr. Rutherford?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I would like to point out to the Speaker is the fact that we have now interrupted debate to raise an issue without relating it to a rule, and that, in fact, violates decorum. That this was a debate between a member and another member. He was answering the questions as they came or not, but either way, to interrupt that to say that that's not decorum because they don't like, another member doesn't like the tone of the question violates decorum, and that we should not allow them to try and use the Speaker to interrupt a debate where one member can either choose to answer the question or not, and another member was literally phrasing the question when he was interrupted by somebody else saying that he lacked decorum when in fact she lacks decorum.
All right. Let's not delve into personalities here, guys. Look, this is a simple question. Does anyone else wish to be heard on this, Ms. Calhoun? All right. Guys, look. Told you this before. My job is to maintain decorum in this body. My job is not to be a referee, not to tell people how to act, and you have to be accountable for your own conduct and the way you behave in this body. But I'm going to make sure that we behave in a manner of respect and decency to one another, and that's what's important for me. I'm going to again read the rule, so members listen, please. I had to do this last year, and I'm going to have to do it again another year for you guys. So please listen to this. The Speaker shall take measures to strictly enforce the provisions of Rule 3.6 and will ensure that every member takes a seat. Mr. Rutherford, hear that? No. Acts with decorum at all times and refrains from disrespect of the institution of the House or the Senate, and to all personalities observes decency of speech and confines himself to the question under consideration when the House is in session. Under the decorum rule, which I am required to maintain, every member shall rise from his seat, respectfully address himself to the Mr. Speaker, and shall avoid disrespect to the House and Senate and the personalities, observe decency of speech, and shall confine himself to the questions. So that is really the issue right here, is we're going to observe decency of speech and avoid disrespect of House and Senate personalities. And so I heard questions, I heard things going on. There was questions about what the reason for this to be, this reason that you put up the amendment. I certainly think you can ask reasons why. I did not hear it go into a personality conflict, but guys, half the time when y'all are arguing with one another, I can't hear. I will first admit that I need hearing aids. I certainly understand that, but I got to hear these things. And so to the point, Ms. Trantham, that you made that, I overrule your point of order. I did not hear anything that crossed that line of impugning personalities. To the extent it has or it occurred in that, I would remind the body, please do not impugn people's and reasons that they are bringing this up or their persons. We are not here to have personality conflicts. We are here to debate legislation. And we're going to maintain the respect and dignity of this institution. It's not about us that is in here. It's this institution has survived for centuries. And people have to abide by the rules. And if politics starts dividing this body and starts pulling us into the land of abusive and rude behavior, then we lose control of the process, and South Carolina is not served. So please, guys, I have asked you that since I was elected Speaker. I'm going to continue to maintain that we're going to have decorum. Thank you for raising that, Mr. Trantham. I appreciate the issue. Mr. Rutherford, all right. No, but I appreciate someone raising the decorum. And so we need to, Mr. Rutherford, I understand, but to the extent that you are trying to make a motion, a point of order, while you are arguing against the point of order, I hereby deny your point of order. So, okay. Well, I got to always have the opportunity to deny your points of order or anything else I can deny for you. Yes, sir. All right. Well, so, Mr. Morgan, while all this occurred, your 10 minutes has expired. Do you wish to have a second 10 minutes?
I will, and I'll reclaim my time.
All right. Mr. Morgan.
I hope that y'all in here will look past personality. As I mentioned, this is a bipartisan issue. I've talked to Democrats in the room. I've talked to members of the Republican caucus in the room. I've talked to members of my caucus, and there seemed to be support for this from a lot of different people. I hope you will consider this amendment on its merits, and I hope you will support it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got 3 more questions.
He waited. I'm sorry.
Mr. Rutherford.
But then I would like to be done. No.
Mr. Morgan, tell me, because you said it's a bipartisan thing, the Biden administration has done it, the Trump administration has done it, but I'm like Mr. Gatch. What is the inherent evil with someone being a lobbyist and then being placed as in this situation, I guess, an agency head?
Yeah, there's no inherent evil, but it opens definitely the can of worms to potential conflicts, because you just have people who were just lobbying for companies, for interests, and now they're going to literally take that, they were just paid for it, into the very agencies that's going to be regulating them. And we don't want that kind of influence that would be on decision making. As I mentioned, this is done in almost every state. It's done at the federal level. It's not some attempt to try to impugn lobbyists. There's a very real issue with the lobbyists' interactions with government. We want good governance. We want transparency. We want people not to be paid for what are you? Do you have another question?
Yeah, I do, because again, I'm not impugning your motives. I'm simply asking you, if you want this to be bipartisan in support of your amendment, should you not more acutely address the inherent evil? And if we're talking about, if I could finish, if we're talking about this being, and let me be clear, I was over here minding my business, and then I heard your amendment, I started to wake up and pay attention. But if you are talking about lobbyists that, for example, got paid to lobby, as Mr. Gatch said, for a particular medicine or a particular problem that DHEC deals with, and you want to say that that person could not be the agency head, you could probably get bipartisan support. But for example, someone that volunteered to come up and lobby for MAD, that's saying that that person, because they volunteered for MAD, because they don't like drunk drivers, you're saying that they're evil enough that they can't be an agency head. I can't support that.
That's a good question. So the registered is that you're paid lobbyists. So no, if you just come up to talk, you stand out in the lobby and lobby for something you really care about, it wouldn't follow.
So then MAD paid them.
If you're being paid.
By MAD.
Yes, then they have to register as a lobbyist. Yeah, that's current state law.
Right, and so if
and there's a reason, because there was bipartisan support when they implemented those policies, because there were clear issues where you had the entanglements between lobbyists and government and agencies and legislators. It's all there's been issues all across the board. And that's why we have these laws. That's why we have ethics laws, transparency laws. That's why we require lobbyists to register. I think it's an important thing that we all understand. It's why it's current state law, and it's why I think we should do it in this case.
But Mr. Morgan, if I could, on behalf of somebody looking at your amendment, thinking that it's a good idea, not wanting you to lecture from the will to the point, and from the body, from the podium to the point where I can't tell you that if you were acutely addressing those persons that you thought were evil, rather than an entire category of persons who may be lobbying for, again, drunk driving, they may be lobbying for some computer that has nothing to do with DHEC, and now they can't, because they had a job, can't hold this job without any relation thereof. I think that begins to be the problem. And if you were to address it more acutely, and explain to the body what the problem is, do you think maybe it could be bipartisan, rather than what you may end up getting is everybody moving to table your amendment?
No, I think it will be bipartisan. First of all, I think the breakdown is that you're saying this acute evil that there is of lobbyists, and as I mentioned, there's not an evil that is just there because somebody's a lobbyist. It is when you get into issues where there might be entanglements, where you might have inappropriate relationships between groups that you've lobbied for and that you're going to go regulate, as I mentioned. And so this is rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of trying to figure out which is which, registered lobbyists are people that have been paid to come up here and lobby. So it makes perfect sense to have them, since they've done that, to take a hiatus from that before taking over an agency head.
But Mr. Gatch mentioned to you that you have doctors who are being paid by a pharmaceutical company to push a particular drug, and you're not banning that
Well, if they're lobbying, then no, they would register and be
Mr. Morgan, listen, seriously. I don't need the speaker to interrupt. But if you want me to wait until you finish talking, then you got to wait till I finish talking. Or we can go back to the way it used to be, where I talk and you talk, which is fine with me, either one. But I won't involve him. But just, you can't keep talking if you're going to interrupt me. So now, if a doctor who's being paid by a pharmaceutical company to push this drug with the exclusion of other things that may be better is not excluded, then why is it that a lobbyist who is being paid by MAD to come up and talk about drunk driving is excluded? And do you not see the fallacy of your argument? And that's what Mr. Gatch was trying to point out to you, that you have created an evil.
Yes, okay,
That evil being the lobbyist in the lobby.
Yes, do you want me to answer?
People, but when I'm done talking. Not the people that are being paid to do exactly what you're talking about.
So the issue is that you and Mr. Gatch seem to not understand that if you are being paid, if that doctor's being paid to come up here and lobby, they will be a registered lobbyist and they're covered. So that is the answer. We're not talking about, there's not instances where somebody is a lobbyist, they're not being registered. If they are a registered lobbyist right here under the code, which is already state law, then they would be the ones that have to
I think the disconnect is that you don't see that we're not talking about a doctor being paid to lobby. We're talking about a doctor who's being paid out in the field to go and speak, to talk about this drug and how much better it is, and all the other drugs that may be actually better than that drug, that this is a paid performer on behalf of Big Pharma. You're saying that that doctor can be in this position, but a lobbyist for something that had nothing to do with what DHEC does can't.
Totally understand. So first, if you want that to be added to this, by all means, go add that person and restrict them. This legislation right now, no one's prohibited. So you can have the registered lobbyist, or you can have that one do it. This specifically relates to, and I have other amendments, but this one specifically relates to registered lobbyists. So I would say let's stay on task and focus on the policy. This prohibits registered lobbyists from who have been lobbying for 5 years.
And just to be clear,
and with
your
that,
task,
we're on the hamster wheel now.
Right.
So with that, I will step away.
Okay. Good.
All right. Mr. Jordan is recognized to speak on the amendment. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first off, let me start out and say it is not my intention to criticize the underlying sentiment of the amendment, but I do need to point out a few things. Number one, and I think this was expressed in the debate previously, there's nothing to preclude, in this case, the governor, whoever that may be at the time, from employing such a policy if they so choose. As you heard, I think the Biden administration, and before that the Trump administration, Democrat and Republican, from employing such a policy if they so choose. Secondly, there's nothing from impeding the Senate, when they are going through the process of considering the governor's nominee, from bringing up and discussing the issue, whatever the lobbying issue, if it does exist, and taking that into consideration if they withhold their consent to the governor's nominee. And thirdly, and I think this is the most important because it's the most practical, currently South Carolina has the services of what is widely regarded as the most successful DHHS secretary maybe we've ever had. Very competent, runs a great ship, does a great job, and that individual would have been precluded from serving based on this. So again, not saying it shouldn't be considered by the governor, not saying it can't be considered by the Senate, but let's not throw the practical side of this out in consideration as well. So for that, Mr. Speaker, I move to table.
All right, Mr. Jordan's going to hold his motion. Mr. Long is recognized to speak on the amendment. Mr. Long.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And I was waiting to ask a question, so I just want to make a couple of points that I wasn't able to ask questions related to. And I do think there's a little bit of a difference between federal agencies and state agencies, partly related to the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that federal lobbyists are able to make campaign contributions, whereas state lobbyists can't. So federal lobbyists definitely have a little bit more of that intimate connection with Congress by nature of their ability to make campaign contributions. And I want the most qualified person for this role, and that might entail a variety of different resumes. Maybe they've got great administrative experience, maybe they've got great healthcare experience, but there's kind of a broad amount of issues that somebody could have experience in to qualify for this role. And I don't think that should preclude somebody who has served in lobbying. And one thing that I also want to point out is that you can have a conflict from prior jobs but not have been a registered lobbyist. So there are people out there who do consulting work, and they don't lobby because they don't ask you or tell you what to do, but they do consulting where they'll help answer questions, they'll help connect people with people, and they get paid to consult. And this wouldn't preclude somebody who is a, quote, consultant from being able to serve in this role. So, and somebody who maybe has been over a hospital system, you know, an executive for a hospital system, who would obviously have a lot of experience, but they may have a conflict of interest related to their experience with the hospital service. This wouldn't prohibit them from being able to serve in this role. Somebody who maybe works for the medical association or is on the medical association board or their director or their president, whatever. None of those people are registered lobbyists, but an argument could be made that they might have a conflict. And maybe somebody can speak to how the Ethics Act would apply to cabinet secretaries and what their potential conflicts would be there. I think that the governor is able to weigh all those different factors, and then the Senate, with the confirmation, has the ability to weigh all those different factors as well. I just wanted to raise those points since I wasn't able to ask the questions related to them, that it seems like we're targeting one group of people by nature of their employment, but that doesn't really address the issue of people that may have conflicts and the ability for somebody to do the job. And I just don't think this amendment tackles the issue that we're trying to do here.
All right, Mr. Magnuson, are you taking questions? No, sir. He's not taking questions, Mr. Magnuson. All right, Mr. Jordan moves to table. Mr. Beach requests a roll call. To non-members second that request. Non-members do. Voting on the board, table in motion. All right, during roll call, ladies and gentlemen, if y'all just let me have order for a second. Mr. Jermaine Johnson is recognized for a special introduction. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Today, I have the distinct pleasure and honor of introducing the Youth Corps. If y'all will go ahead and stand up, you see you're up there in the gallery right there. Youth Corps is a high school leadership program that builds leadership qualities and teaches responsibility through real-world experiences. And it's of 9 community leader-led modules ranging from arts, culture, media, government, to business, philanthropy, and finance. They are here. I was able to go speak to them at the Palmetto Club earlier at lunch today. They had some fantastic questions, and a lot of these individuals up there, they are looking to go on and study and replace a lot of us that are in this General Assembly here. I think we're going to have to do some convincing to keep them here in the state. A lot of them have plans to leave the state for college. I booed them when they said that, but we want to go ahead and convince them, let them know that we do support them. We want to see them to stay here in South Carolina. So please help me welcome the Youth Corps.
Welcome to the State House. All right, getting mixed messages. Hope you enjoy your visit up here. Thank you for joining us today, guys. All right, what do you? All right. All right, time has expired. Polls are closed. Now clerk will tabulate. All right, by a vote of 88 to 21, the amendment is hereby tabled.